Top of the morning to you. I guess it's technically afternoon, but since it's St. Patrick's Day, we're gonna go with morning because afternoon doesn't sound very Irish. So my name is Jane Covington, and I am feeling especially lucky and blessed on this St. Patrick's Day to serve alongside all of the amazing Rotarians in this room. I'd like to say a special welcome to our guests today. We're thrilled to have you with us. And we will get started with our invocation by Burt Bradford and the pledge and four-way test led by Rod Freeman.
Would you pray with me, please? Father God, we want to thank you for this beautiful day you've given us. Thank you for our community and our country. Thank you for those who make decisions for us, that you be involved in their decisions. Lord, we thank you for this Rotary Club and the services we provide. Lord, we thank you for this food you provide for us today. Before I leave, Father, we want to ask a special blessing on our members who are ill: Bill McCarthy, Leon Partang, Sarah Johnson, and George Johnson's wife, Denise. Father God, we offer this prayer in our Savior's name. Amen.
You all please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, we just the thing to think, say, and do. First,
Is it the truth?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
and fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Hope so.
Now, Bart King is going to introduce guests and visitors.
Okay. Is that on? Okay, our visitors, we have, Ted has a couple of visitors with him today. Would you introduce your visitor, please?
As long as I know him, he's been in the nonprofit world, so I'm very happy to have him here. And then also I have Chris Pangalo. I have Chris Pangalo with me. He's in my BNI networking group. I'm very happy to have him here today as well. Thank you, guys.
And Zach Benner.
Thank you, Bart. Happy to have Miss Lisa Romero here. She's been in the Nashville area for about 3 years. She works for a company called IDEMIA in the finance aspect of that. So she's familiar with Rotary. One of her friends was the former president, where she came from. And so wanted to kind of know a little more about Rotary, or she knows a little bit about it and kind of the initiatives of giving back. So we're happy to have you here.
Welcome.
Steve Grisham.
Oh, no, he was. Okay. Okay. So welcome to our guests. And now I'm going to ask Ted Illenchillian to come up and do a Rotary Minute for us today.
Good afternoon. I think you guys didn't hear me well. Good afternoon. All right. I feel extremely lucky today because Madam President has told my last name very correctly. That doesn't happen often, okay? So, so when she asked me, she said that, and I said absolutely correct. So thank you, Madam President. So I was asked to talk about Rotary Minute, and when Zach asked me, I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I was just thinking about it. I was thinking about, okay, saving the whole world. Is that what it is? Then I thought I'm not a superhero and my shoulders are not wide enough, large enough to carry that. So I was then thinking, okay, what do we do? What do we do? So I was just diving down and down and down. Finally, I realized only two things are what is making me to come back to Rotary again and again. Those two things are, one is a chemical. The other thing is I'm just being selfish. So what is that chemical? It's called dopamine. Okay. So the funny thing about dopamine is that when you receive something from somebody, you feel good. It's a feel good, mood elevating neurotransmitter sending to your brain. I think that's what I'm thinking. So I'm being selfish because I like to have dopamine in my brain cells. So why is that? So the other funny thing about dopamine is it's not just when you give or receive from somebody, it's also when you witness somebody giving or helping somebody else, you feel better about you. So I come to the club, it's whether it's Larry Kane asking me, hey, Ted, I got your salad and Zach's salad is on this side, or Madam President coming here and then talking about various things our club's doing, Waverly being one of them. And then, our members going to places where they don't have water, toilets, education, polio. When we talk about polio, Kim talking about, saving the world from polio. So I can go on and on and on. And that's why I keep coming back here to this club every week. Thank you.
First time I've ever heard a Rotary Minute where someone said they came back for dopamine. That's pretty cool. So now we're going to do Happy Bucks, and I'm going to ask Michael Kaplan to lead us in that. Who's happy today on St.
All right,
Patrick's
hold
Day?
on one second, George. Don, I think did you get some dollars ready? Or is that you're just playing with money? Yeah, that's fine.
Despite of very poor planning, if I had planned this trip a little better, I could have been in Dublin today for St. Patrick's Day, but I am leaving tomorrow for Ireland,
Oh, wow.
where I'm looking forward to the next 10 days of weather just like this. 46 and raining the entire trip.
Was poor planning.
Hi, I'm George Barrett, and it's the Higgins family I'm going to talk about today. Unbeknownst to me, except the last time that I went to Ireland about 5 years ago, my relatives told me, you have a son and a daughter that live in Nashville, don't you? Yeah. Well, we have a relative over there. It turns out that my grandmother, whose maiden name was Higgins, had a cousin by the name of Higgins, obviously. And some of that family moved not just to Brooklyn, like most of the Irish did, but came on to Nashville because there was a dry goods store by the name of Ford's here downtown. And Mr. Higgins came here and had a job. Well, it turns out that his son is somebody that a lot of you know because Thomas Aquinas Higgins, federal court judge downtown, is one of my cousins. And I had to wait till I got to Nashville to meet this gentleman who is a second cousin to me. And I just wanted to, since it's St. Patrick's Day, and I'm on my way back in August again for about the 6th time, but just a little Irish history. Thank you.
I'm just happy I actually have cash with me.
I have two things actually. First, my mother got one of her bucket list items checked out. We just got back from Norway and she saw the Northern Lights.
Oh, wow.
So that's the first one. The second one is my wife has been going through absolutely catastrophic illness for about the past year. And she has had a good month. And so that is wonderful.
Sir, do you have anything? I wouldn't be happy at that Ole Miss either.
I'm very happy to report that my wife and I in Columbus, Ohio, 60 years ago, were in the same high school. And on this exact date, we started going steady. So here's some green for that, 60 there.
and this covers some of Alan's shortcomings. And also, because of that date in 1966, many of you seen this license plate on the front of my vehicle. It's married 7266, July 2nd, 1966. And this nice white Honda CRV I drive is actually Steve Grissom hand-me-down. Oh, wait a minute, that's not quite right. I had to pay for it. Thank you.
I want to know, is that, Alan, is that a financial
Sure.
problem, or is that
He helped pay for the second portion he's having today.
Just run on through.
Is the treasurer here? Can we get a ruling on this, Patrick? Yeah, I'll give my IOU. So I'm really happy, and I want to invite everybody in a couple of weeks, April 15th in the morning. Some of you guys know, but I've been taking martial arts for the last couple of years, and we're doing some boxing. So I'm going to have my first ever fight
Oh,
in the morning. It'll be at the Brentwood or the Nashville Krav Maga in Brentwood. So I'll give you more details on the specific time, but would love to have you guys there and support me. It's not going to be like MMA or we're going to like fight to the death or I'm going to be knocked out. So I know, right? It'll be like 3 2-minute rounds, but definitely been training and I'm getting my butt kicked less and less every Saturday. So it should be good. It should be fun. So I'd love to have you guys there. Is that a Rotary first also?
I think that's also a Rotary first, a fight. Yeah.
Can you tell us who you're fighting? Matt?
Asking Rotary to support fighting.
Anybody else? Jody.
Hey, I have a lot to be happy about today. I am Irish. My family's from Ballinroe County in Mayo, and my grandfather came through Ellis Island. My mom was one of 10. My dad was one of 7. He was allowed in the family by my pap because he was born on St. Patrick's Day. And I grew up constantly being asked the question. And when I was little, I'm like, what did they mean? Because I was one of 5. So we kind of cut down 10, 7, 5. But people used to say, are you guys Catholic or careless? And I was like, Catholic.
Guess that's it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so now we have a few announcements. Jody and I have a joint announcement right now. So I am preparing the club's submission for district awards. And one of the awards criteria is related to social media. And number of followers is one of the criteria for that award. And we need some people to follow us on social media. So everybody, please get out your phones. Jody's going to tell you how to follow us on Instagram. If you can't get it figured out, she'll help you afterwards. We've got some other folks in here that tech savvy people that can also help you. But please make sure that you're following us on Instagram and liking us. Is that what you do on Facebook? Liking us on Facebook.
And LinkedIn. So who all uses Facebook in here? I know a lot of you do because we have a group page, which is has a lot of activity, but unfortunately, our actual page, which is important because that's how we grow our membership and inviting people. And I share posts all the time like, hey, come to our Rotary Club meeting, or here's an article that was just in the paper about us. It's called Rotary Club of Brentwood, and it has the Rotary symbol. And if y'all could like that page, it would really be important to me. And also we've had a lot of great posts about membership drive. And so if y'all could share this post, sharing is caring in the social media world, not oversharing, but just sharing. And then on Instagram, I've got to find our page here, sorry. We are Brentwood_noon_Rotary. And right now, I mean, we have 74 followers. Yay. So anyways, let's try to make it 100. So if you're on Instagram, like it, thank you. Follow us, appreciate it. And remember, share. And on Instagram, it isn't like you can just share the post, but what you can do is you can share it to your story. So then people click your story and they see what's going on at your Rotary Club. So anyways, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help you, but thanks.
Thanks, everybody. And just, ask anybody. because I'll check one more time to see what our number of followers are before I have to submit the awards on the 22nd. So help us get there. Julie has a Pancake Day announcement.
All right, guys, we are only a couple weeks away to April 1st, Pancake Day. On your tables are final assignments. We still have some of the yellow in there. So if anyone can take on a second shift or bring a spouse or family member, that would be very, very helpful. I know Friday's full, so no need, we don't need any help on Friday, but definitely Saturday, we could use some extra hands. So just let me know, or Jordan, if you guys can pick up extra shifts. Thank you. It's gonna be a fun day.
Also, Betsy has the extra tickets and she went out of town and was gonna put them in my mailbox, but she forgot. So the extra tickets will be here next Friday. If you need us to drop some off either to your house or your business, let me know, because Betsy or I will make that happen if you need them before next Friday. And then finally, we're going to ask Steve Grissom has a few words that I don't want to hear about to say to the club. We're going to let him do that before we get to our program.
Quickly, I want Rebecca. Rebecca Nunley. She's a visitor here today. It's my fault. Bart asked me to say something and I thought Bart was talking about something else. But I want to say she is a past Rotarian, a former Rotarian in Alabama. And so she's looking for another club again. So I just want to welcome Rebecca here again today. Sorry, Bart, I did it wrong. But the reason I'm up here, I've been in this club 15 years February. And so it's been one of the greatest experiences. And what I could say to any of you new members, sometimes it is hard to get acclimated and just find your place. But what I did when I got in this group, we had a project in Belize, and Roger and Gil kind of just took me in, and I just kind of adopted them and just kind of followed in their footsteps. And I guess I probably made about 9 trips to Belize. And that really helped me get acclimated to the club and develop some really great friendships that I hope we'll have for the rest of my life. And so that's what I would stress to anybody joining the club. Whatever you want to do, just get started. Find something, link on somewhere, get busy, and you'll grow your Rotary membership. It's been one of the greatest things that I've ever done. So this next Friday will be my last week in this club. I am moving to Franklin, North Carolina. That's in Western North Carolina. And so my wife and I are moving up there. My parents haven't spoken to me this week. I'm leaving my parents, my grandkids, and my children all here. So I'm doing the opposite of what most grandparents would probably do. So I will be joining the Franklin, North Carolina Wednesday Noon Club. It's a great club, much like this club. And so I'm looking forward to it. So if you ever get up to Franklin, it's in Western North Carolina. We're about 11 miles from the Highlands, if that helps you at all. A couple hours from Atlanta, about an hour from Nashville. So we're looking forward to our trucks actually leaving this Saturday to take us. And then we're going to be up there through Tuesday, and then we're coming back home to this home. And we don't move officially until the 30th of this month. So I'll be here next week for sure. So I just wanted to say, love this club. It meant the world to me and my family. And I'll miss y'all.
We'll be awfully sad to see Steve go, but hopefully you'll be back often to visit all your family that you're leaving behind, and you can come visit this club. And at least you're staying in Rotary, so we're thankful for that. Okay, so before I ask Mayor Little to come up and introduce our speaker, this is a test to see how many of you are both Rotary fans and hockey fans. The Rotary Club of Brentwood is on the power play. Pretty good, pretty good. Okay, Mayor Little. Yeah, that was kind of iffy. Y'all could have.
Well, first, may the road rise to meet you, and may the wind always be at your back, and may the rains fall gently on your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hands. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I've got, as many of you know, the great pleasure of introducing Pete Weber, the voice of the Predators, and his 24th season as the voice and face of the Predators. Because when the team first came, he and his colleague Terry Chris pretty much educated whole community and all of Middle Tennessee and even a lot of the state, a lot of fans from Huntsville, Alabama, and all over. And we now have one of the, or what's considered, as I've traveled around a few times with Hockey Ministries International, that it's one of the best fan bases in the NHL. So I give a lot of credit to Pete. This year he won his 9th Tennessee Sportscaster of the Year, 4-time regional Emmy winner, inducted into the Buffalo Baseball Hall of Fame and inducted into the Buffalo Broadcast Hall of Fame. He's called games for the LA Kings, the Buffalo Sabres, for minor league teams, Buffalo, Rochester, and Albuquerque, U.S. Hockey at the 1984 Sarajevo Olympics, the Seattle Supersonics, and was part of the broadcast team for all 4 Bills Super Bowl appearances. Called games for the University of Buffalo and for his alma mater, the University of Notre Dame. Go Irish. He has called games for the Music City Bowl and the Nashville Sounds. I will say the level of sophistication, and Lennis being a Chicago native, he probably can tell you, of the Nashville fans is really high. But I can tell you as a fan from day one that all the great plays, when you re-listen to them, are greatly enhanced. And I'll give just a few examples. The 2011 first playoff series win over the Ducks to go into the second round to have the knuckleheads beat us. But Colton Sisson's hat trick to propel the Preds past the Ducks again into the Stanley Cup final. And the first home game against the Panthers, October 10th, 1998, with Barry Trotz as head coach, who is now our new GM. These are just snippets of the thousands of memories that Pete Weber has given us. And Pete Weber, I will say, listening to him these 24 years, is able to leap over tall names with only consonants in them, faster than a speeding bullet, describing a breakaway of a Forsberg, Johansson to Duchesne tic-tac-toe score, or lately a Sherwood to Novak to Evangelista score. And what is most impressive, he's been on IR, so he's not traveled with the team. And so they had a long road trip. And on Tuesday night, they came back and he had to go into the booth only to be given an Asplund, Afanasiev, and Jankowski line. So I want to welcome the greatest announcer in sports, Pete Weber.
Thank you so much. And I'd have to say, sometimes I think about where I have been and where we are going. And this has been one incredible ride. My ride included having a shunt put in my skull back in early January and being able to work a game 4 days later at Bridgestone Arena. And people have told me before that I'm sometimes out of my mind, but my favorite story with that goes back, and I'm a big baseball fan too. 1934 World Series, Cardinals and the Tigers. And no, I didn't broadcast that one, but Dizzy Dean was on the base paths, the Cardinals pitcher, and he tried to break up a double play. And Charlie Gehringer, I think it was, the second baseman, his throw struck Dizzy on the skull and he was knocked out. Next day's Detroit Free Press headline, X-rays of Dean's head show nothing. So that's pretty much what they did with me. And by the way, Steve, you're talking about your departure. I think that one of the best after dinner speakers I ever heard was comedian Norm Crosby. And he asked if maybe you could get a standing ovulation, which is what you got here. Nice of you people all to contribute in that regard for Steve and being ready to welcome him back when he comes to next week's meeting. But the Predators right now, they always talk about going into the trade deadline. Are you buyers, meaning you're thinking you got a chance, or are you sellers thinking you have no chance whatsoever? Well, the Predators sold off some people, including Tanner Jeannot. And I've been asked, why in the world would David Poile trade Tanner Jeannot? And I said, just look at what he got back. He got 5 draft picks. That's going to take care of the Predators dominating the draft at Bridgestone Arena coming up this June. And the one thing that I hate about trading Tanner Jeannot, his mother comes down from Saskatchewan and makes these killer cheesecakes. And so we've lost that. Unless we can make a deal with Tampa to bring mom back into Nashville and then open up a great bakery. I think, do we have seed money here for a cheesecake factory? It would not hold a candle to what she produced and brought upstairs to us. So that was absolutely fantastic. But right now, the Predators putting on a push that I don't think anybody foresaw at all, including David Poile and including head coach John Hines. And it's interesting, every fan base will get on their coach or on their general manager if things aren't going their way. And that's why I think about talk show hosts and the 4-way test. I don't think any talk show host could pass many of these, to be certain, especially, is it fair? Is it fair? But I've heard a lot of unfair accusations lobbed at the guys who have been head of the Predators since I got here. My first day on the job was September 12th, 1998. And 1 week later, we were playing our first preseason game in Huntsville. And that was the night that Patrick Cote, who has now served some prison time, not because of that, but he got into 3 separate fights with Peter Worrell of the Florida Panthers. And those were long, long scraps. And Crispy and I were there that night. And at the Von Braun Arena in Huntsville, you have to stand up to see the ice, sit down to see the scoreboard. And with all the penalties that were called that night, it was important we saw how much penalty time remained. So we were bouncing back with that. We should have had just like a pogo stick where we were to keep our perspective accurate on the scoreboard. But the journey through the years, making the playoffs the first time, we were in Denver and we had nothing to do with making the playoff because we didn't, not so much back in, but there was another game result the night before the final game of the year where we found out that we were in, and then all of a sudden, I think the bar closed down at the Marriott in downtown Denver that night because we had emptied it with a great time. And that was then going into the playoffs. And of course, who did the Predators get matched with? Detroit Red Wings. And that was where the Predators lost 2 one-goal games at the Joe in Detroit, and then came back home and won 2 here, including Thomas Vokun's shutout in game number 4. So we fly back to Detroit. We remember the days of newspapers. Remember when there were newspapers? We see the Detroit Free Press on the stand there, and it said panic in Hockey Town. They were concerned because this upstart group of Predators had tied their playoff series. Well, Detroit went on and won the next 2 and took care of that. But it's always been a case, and even 3 nights ago when Detroit was in town, I still feel it. And I don't know about you, but that intense rivalry, even though we've moved to another division and only play them twice a year, there's something special about our catfish and their octopus thrown on the ice. And by the way, if you want me to buy you a catfish to throw, I'll be more than happy to do that for you. We had 3 catfish the other night in the Detroit game, and that was now when they first, after that tragedy in Columbus, where a young lady got struck by a puck and subsequently died, and they put the mesh netting up above the glass. Well, one of our fans wasn't too aware of that mesh. He had what had to at least have been a 15-pound catfish and threw it, and it landed splat in the lap of this one couple sitting right behind the glass. And that was, let's just say they were looking for Febreze right after that. And by the way, you know, we wouldn't have Febreze if it weren't for hockey. Febreze, I'm certain, was invented by a hockey mom who had all these smelly bags in the house that she had to do something to combat them, to be certain. But it's been fun watching everything develop here, and the night that Mike Fisher scored in triple overtime in the series against San Jose. And so we were in the second round then, and the team was not televising because of the national contracts. So Terry Crisp was sitting up with Brent Peterson and me for that game. And I could play you the recording. Well, actually, I might have it on my phone. It's over there on the table. But Brent Peterson was so excited. And then Crispy came over and wrapped his arms around him and squeezed all the breath out of Brent's body. And you heard this, wah! That's the reality of live sports and the calls that you get right there. And we were talking about Lloyd Pettit here earlier. One of the greatest blessings I've had coming here, who owns the Milwaukee Admirals when the Predators got started? Lloyd and Jane Bradley Pettit. And to get the stories from him, someone I grew up listening to, was just absolutely fantastic. And I'll tell you privately sometime about when Lloyd had a little blooper in the playoffs in '71 and said that Bobby Hull hit the something post in overtime. And WMAQ radio carrying the Hawks at the time went dark for about 10 seconds as Lloyd recovered. That and my wife often is worried that I'm going to say something similar. That's why I substitute things like holy cow and go ape, everybody, go ape. That is just a cover. It's Joe Bowen, who does the Toronto Maple Leafs, took something from his father, who was also a broadcaster, and he will exclaim, holy Mackinac. Now, what in the hell does that bridge have to do? But it keeps him out of trouble and keeps him on the air. The trade deadline was very intriguing. And aside from losing the great supply of cheesecakes, you know, you lose a Nino Niederreiter, who was one of the summer signees, who was working out very well for the club. But if you think you're not going to make the playoffs, you deal him away if you get good assets back. It's not easy to become a seller, and particularly not easy for David Poyle, who doesn't like the idea of giving up the battle. But by giving up that battle, the youngsters who have come in have done a tremendous job putting the club back on not just an even keel, but one that seems to be ascending until last night against the Blackhawks. And the Blackhawks were the team that first intrigued me about hockey. So it was difficult for me when we played them in the 3 playoff series, watching all that go on, because were it not for Lloyd Pettit, were it not for Bobby Hull, Stan Mikita, Glenn Hall, and later Tony Esposito, I might not be a hockey fan today. I might not be standing here talking to you. I might be doing a baseball thing someplace, but I'll be happy to do either. But this is just so much fun. Now, do we have any questions in the audience that you would like to ask? And we have microphones for you too. So please just stand up, raise your hands, whatever you might have, and I will try to answer them for you.
Yeah, can you go into detail about the octopus in Detroit and how that became a catfish here?
Sure. Back in the 50s, when there were only 6 teams in the NHL, it took 8 victories to claim the Stanley Cup. So the Cusimano brothers fish market in Detroit came up with the idea, hey, an octopus, 8 wins, 8 tentacles. I'm very careful to enunciate tentacles. Seems to fit in mathematically. So that's how that all got started. And so that started back in the 50s. And then the Predators fans, creative bunch they are, came up with something much more along our lines and the catfish. One night in Detroit at Joe Louis Arena, a fan was wearing a yellow rain slicker, and the Predators were not doing well at all. They were down, and they had been down, I think, since the national anthem. And so he had this catfish taped to his body inside the yellow rain slicker. And he had enough. He knew what would happen. So I could see him walk down in front of me, down behind the penalty box, take out the catfish and just throw it over the glass onto the ice, and then turn around and gladly be escorted out by the police and the security, because number one, he didn't want to smell like that anymore. And number two, the game was long gone for him. So and then there was the guy in Pittsburgh in the Cup final who was arrested for throwing a catfish on the ice. And I think they had him up on murder charges for a while, but finally we got him released. So that wasn't easy, but hey, it happens. Right here.
I just had a question, when you just mentioned about the Stanley Cup Finals. What was it like covering that, because of the frenzy that happened here and
Yeah.
the frenzy that happened with Ben's fans?
It was no fun whatsoever. It was a real downer. There was nothing better because all my friends from many years in hockey were in town, many of them, to cover the event. And the one thing I did not like, I thought that Sidney Crosby should have been called for double dribbling PK Subban's head back of the net, and he wasn't. So that was a definite bummer there. But that Stanley Cup final, and to see what downtown turned into, absolutely incredible. Something I can never forget. And I went through those 4 Super Bowls with the Bills, including when we came back from what is still known in Buffalo history as wide right against the Giants in Super Bowl 25. And we're being brought in to a rally in Niagara Square, right in front of the City Hall. And the fans start chanting for Scott Norwood. And Scott looks at me and says, "Do they want to string me up?" Or no. They want to tell you they're still with you. And that's exactly what they did. And that's something I can't forget.
Pete, what's the best Terry Crisp story that you can tell?
In public? He has misspoken several times on the air. And I don't, okay, this is a mixed audience. It's sort of a holy day for me being a Notre Dame grad, and it's St. Patrick's Day. And by the way, I'm going back to Dublin for Notre Dame Navy at the end of this August. So I was there in 2012, going back again this time around. But Crispy, okay, he would get mistaken with our headphone boxes and our microphone boxes, and he would press my off switch instead of his when he was going to talk to the truck. And let's just say he one night said on the air that the nickname of his good teammate, Rick McLeish, from the Flyers, because we were bemoaning the lack of color and nicknames in the game today. And I said, "How about Rick McLeish?" And Terry goes, yeah. Then the producer says in his ear, "Don't leave the audience hanging, Terry. Don't leave the audience hanging." So that happened a couple of times. And finally, Terry just pushed the correct talkback button of the truck. And I said, "Do you really want me to say old iron cock on the air?" So that was one example of what has happened with Terry in the broadcast booth. I can say that about Rick McLeish. He now is not with us any longer, but that was just one example. One example there. There's the question here.
What are the chances of us making the playoffs?
They are fair. They are 4 points back with games in hand, and they've got 2 meetings with the team that they're trying to catch. The Winnipeg Jets still coming, including tomorrow, late morning, early afternoon. So if they can win those and the other 15 or so games, I think they'll be pretty good shape. But Winnipeg lost last night at home to Boston, and Boston is a pretty fair hockey club, even though they had lost 2 this week. They are the favorites right now to run away with things. But recall, when the Predators went to the final in 2017, they were the last team to make the field. And then they beat the Blackhawks in that next first round. And not once, thanks to Pekka Rinne's ability. And by the way, Pekka's statue gets unveiled next weekend on the 25th. Thanks to Pekka Rinne, not once did I have to listen to that Chelsea Dagger song following a Blackhawks goal because they did not score against him. Yes, sir.
I have the pleasure of having a grandson who played on the Pred 16 and under team. His name is Ryan Barrett, and his father helped coach with John Higgins, who's that judge I
Yes.
talked about.
Yep.
I figured you may remember some of those names.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. And I like the fact that we've already produced one NHLer here, though he was a transplant. The Danny Jeffreyon's son, Blake, who now is a scout. And Blake had one of the more gruesome injuries I can recall. He got cut on the side of the head by a skate, which is why they have the rule now that when your helmet gets knocked off, you got to go back to the bench right now. And that happened to him while playing in the American League. But Blake Jeffreyon has carried the Predators through here. And now with all the rinks that have gone up, I think we have more than a decent chance of producing some more NHLers right here in Middle Tennessee.
Well, Ryan played for the Butler team up there, Butler University. And he spent 4 great years there. And I just wanted to say hello to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Anybody else as we continue with Meet the Press? Oh, right here.
So I don't know if this is an accurate observation or not, but it seemed like when Mike Fisher was still there, that there was some kind of special, like, camaraderie or something. Am I crazy, or was there a special Mike Fisher factor that maybe happened in the locker room that helped the team to gel?
Yeah, he would bring Carrie in to sing to them.
That
Yeah.
could do it, yeah.
There was something special in at that period of time. Yes. And when he scored that triple overtime goal, it was a school night. It was 1:05 in the morning, and I don't think anybody had left the building. And whether they knew that Mike was going to score or not is another thing altogether. But that was a super, super night for all concerned. And Mike still has a thing we do for the Predators Foundation. He has his clay shoot every year that everybody goes to. And it seems like that sold out this last year very quickly. I have to wait and see when they get the date set for this year, what happens. Last year it got a little bit more complicated because of the trip to Switzerland and to the Czech Republic, which I'm having trouble enough not saying Czechoslovakia, but now they've even updated the name even more. It's now Czechia. Yeah. They changed names more than we changed names on buildings around the NHL. I mean, the Philadelphia Flyers have been in their building, the current building, since 1996. They've had 4 different name changes. And I think it's all a thing with the people who make signage for buildings to do all that. Yes.
With David Poyle retiring and Barry Trotz coming in, was that kind of a stipulation of his retirement that he requests him to come in and kind of take his spot?
I think really it was more coincidence that Trotzy was available, and Trotzy decided not to take one of the many coaching jobs that were offered him after he was dismissed from the Islanders. But he didn't have the financial incentive to sign on right away because he was paid this entire last year not to coach by the Islanders. His contract still covered that. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a job where I can just not do a darn thing and still cash the checks. Aren't we all? Anybody else? Well, thank you very much for your time and your attention. Sorry for all the stream of consciousness, but that's just the way I operate. And I'm glad I have consciousness that can work every now and then for me. Maybe see some of you tomorrow afternoon at the rink with Winnipeg in town. And by the way, the best game in Winnipeg Predators history was the one where both penalty boxes were filled at the same time. There were 6 guys aside in there, and that might have been when the penalty box attendant asked for his own can of Febreze.
Thank you so much, Pete. We give as a gift to our speakers a pen with our club's logo on it. And we will ask that you back at the table autograph this book that we read to first graders about Rotary. And when we read the book, we tell them about the speaker who autographed it. So thank you for being here. We may not tell them about your court record. We'll come up with some other things, other positive things to say. So welcome again to our guests. We really hope you will consider, hint, hint, Becky, joining our club. And I too am going to end with another Irish blessing. I love this one. May peace and plenty be the first to lift the latch to your door, and happiness be your guest today and evermore. If there's nothing else for the good of a Rotary, we're adjourned.
Always plays over the wrong. Wilson stops. But once there's a time series, there's a 4-3 win. Holy cow.
Shop temperature balancing sheets from Sleep Number because 80% of couples sleep too